Gabriella, hi. Gabriella, you know that I've been working with Brefi Group, working with Richard Winfield, with his coaching approach, and I was wondering whether you might find it interesting to use the particular approach that I've been taught, because I know there's a couple of issues you've come here to talk to me about, and I thought it'd be really appropriate to try and use this approach with you, and to resolve some, or maybe to get some insight into some of the issues that we were going to talk about anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's fine.
And basically, it's a series of questions that we're going to be asking, really, to probing and digging down into what it is you're looking to, what is what you want to achieve. And the first question is really quite straightforward. And the question that we really want to ask at the moment is, what would be the most useful question for me to ask you now?
Right. Well, Michael, as soon as I've come to see you today about shooting the video, we've just had taken footage to give me something to work with.
Yeah.
I guess the most useful question would be, well, what am I going to do with it?
Okay.
How am I going to use the video to further develop marketing?
So you're looking to shoot a video, and
just if I can interrupt, just ask the question.
Okay.
She's told you what the question is. Change I to you or whatever, and just ask it back.
Okay. Sorry, I'm lost. You're asking me now to sort of answer, what would it be if you did know?
Yes.
But
No.
She not told me she didn't know.
It's very, very simple.
The question.
Yeah.
Yes, you explain.
Yeah. The question was, what am I going to do with the footage, and how am I going to use it further?
Okay. So, what are you going to do with the footage, and how are you going to use it further?
I will pick it apart to find out how I can simplify the explanation I give to potential clients that come to our website.
Okay. So, I'm confused now whether you want me to continue along this line here, or whether you want me to continue along the line.
You can continue your
So
coaching,
good.
but using the questions. So if one of the questions stands out, like what might be better than that, use it. But if you don't know what to say, whenever you don't know what to say, just say, well, actually, what would be the most useful question for me to ask you now? And there are quite enough number of different intonations you can use to make even that one sentence have lots of variety in it. But this is the challenge. This is why it's so nice for me to have you demonstrating it. It's because it's so simple that it doesn't seem to make sense. But just do it.
Okay. So, great. So picking it apart is great. Excellent. So given that, what would now be the most useful question for me to ask you?
Excellent.
Well, given that I will be taking it apart to find out how I can simplify it, once I've found out how I can simplify the explanation, how will I best use the information that I got out of this process?
Okay. So how will you best use the information you get out of this process?
Well, obviously I will have taken notes, and it will help me construct the right questions that need to be asked, so I can give simple answers and explanations.
Right. What would be even better than that?
Even better than that is that after this I'd find a person to practice with before I shoot the next video.
And to a certain extent, that sort of wraps that side of it quite nicely, isn't it? As far as the video is concerned. So again, again, what would be the most useful question for me to ask of you now?
Who would I like to practice with?
Okay. Who would you like to practice with?
As soon as you were part of this process, shooting the first video, I think I'd like to practice with you.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
That's fine with me. I suppose just going back into, I could ask any of these questions, they've all got a response. So,
yes.
for instance, if I asked them, well, what stops you?
At the moment, the fact that I haven't picked the initial video apart,
Okay.
we've already discussed before we started this process that you and I would work together.
Sure.
So it's nothing stopping me at this point apart from having to do this process first, picking it apart.
So in that process of picking it apart, what will you do now to get to that point of picking it apart?
I'll take the video and I will watch it first. I'll have to wait until Richard has got it off the camera.
Well, again, so given that you've given that, I could ask you again, what would be the most useful question for me to ask of you now?
When will I do it?
Well, it'd be okay.
Again, as soon as I got the footage from Richard, I will sit down and do it. And once we have put a date into our diaries where we reconvene and shoot the next one, the even better one.
An even better one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you'll do. You're going to review that, pick it apart, and the next task is for us to put a date in the diary to reshoot the video based on what you're doing, based on what you've learned from there. In my mind, Richard, that was sort of, I'm saying that's cool.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that's excellent. It takes you to an end, and that would be sufficient. What I think,
in this instance, yeah.
Yes, and what I think would be quite useful in some cases is to say, okay, that appears to wrap it up, so to speak. And I'd just go back and say, actually, is there any other question that would be useful to me ask you now? Because it might be that it's occurred to Gabrielle that there's something else now that I would actually like to add on to it.
Yeah, okay.
And we don't know that. And the great thing about this is we don't know what the client is thinking.
No.
She might not, or she might, but if you ask the right questions, then she's the only person who can. But we did very, very nicely there, because she's a very good client. So she didn't have any things I know what I don't want, and she didn't go off course. But nonetheless, with only 3 or so questions, you were able to get through a process and come out with a conclusion. So was that helpful?
It was very helpful, yeah.
Gabby, thank you very much.
And so, how comfortable was it for you? Because you were the person really who was being tested out here.
As far as I was concerned, what was interesting for me was using a questioning process like this, and is that normally I'm very pedantic and drilling down, so it's outside of my normal style because I have a particular purpose.
Yes.
Here, because people who see me with there's an issue, and then I drill down for that issue. So I'm focused in one particular arena. When it's open like this, to have a series of very simple questions and go free-flowing is a little bit different. So I'm outside my comfort zone in the sense that I'm driving for a particular purpose. Here, because it's more open, and it was useful to have a series of very simple questions which you almost knew which ones weren't appropriate, because you ask them in your head and you think, no, that's sounding stupid. So, but if I ask that question, and the one about what would be the most useful question to ask me? If I don't know what question to ask, then what better question can I ask than what question should I ask? So that was ideal for me to actually sort of, if I feel as though we'd close that little piece off, then I could break out, open into another piece.
Definitely.
Or if I thought I'd closed it, it was closed off, and it may not be. I'm sure, Gabrielle, you would have brought it back up again and said, well, no, actually, the more questions would be probably what's whatever the question might be.
That's right. I felt very much in control of finding my own answers.
Yeah.
One of the things that annoys me the most is when people start telling me or directing me, because we learn to influence each other because we think we know what the person wants. I felt that I totally was at liberty to go any which direction that felt appropriate at the time, and with the question you can go either into the feeling space or into the thought process, which I find very liberating actually.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Michael.
Yeah, great. It was a good illustration of how powerful these very simple questions are, and watching the response. And at the end of the day, of course, the meaning of a communication is the response you get, isn't it?
That's right.
So we've been told.
So there are only 7 questions here, and in the training we try to keep very strictly to them. But as you get the structure in your head, then each of these questions could have 5 or 6 variations, and they could therefore come over as being softer and so on. The purpose of it is to learn how simple it is, and to get rid of all the baggage of thinking I need to know, I need to understand. Because we don't know whether you're going off at a tangent or not. We don't know whether you've actually completed what, and you possibly don't know whether there's something more that you might do. But it's not for us to read and assume we know that. The process will draw it out. Good. So thank you very much, both of you.